I have songs that I'll never play. Like I will never play.
Not like that you've released.
Yeah, that we put on records, and it's
Hmm.
like it's one of those things. You sometimes you force stuff, and I would imagine maybe like would these guys behind closed doors maybe even agree with you and be like, yeah, we missed the mark on this. It's not our best stuff, but we got to put it out.
The Fred Minnick Show is brought to you by Michters and 291 Colorado Whiskey.
And joining the Fred Minnick Show, Raine Maida of Our Lady Peace. How you doing, man?
I'm good, Fred. How are you?
It's good. It's good to see you in this. It's always better if it's in person, but these virtual tastings are as much fun. But I have to tell you, your latest single you resonated so deeply with me because I've been saying this since the Kardashians became famous. But the "Stop Making Stupid People Famous," best name of a song ever.
I'll
Best name
take
of a
it.
song ever.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Yeah, I mean, I it's funny the Kardashians. I followed the breadcrumbs back a little bit further. Like my like aha moment was probably Paris Hilton, but then growing up, it's like Public Enemy's like seminal hip hop band,
Yeah, yeah.
and all of a sudden Flavor Flav is on that VH1 reality show. I was like, we've hit the bottom, man. But obviously we didn't. That was just the beginning.
I always thought Paris though was strategic, and everything that she was doing was a play to make more money because she got really she used her fame and her money to get more famous and more money, and then she kind of disappeared. We're seeing her a little bit now, but she kind of went away for a bit.
You're right. You're spot on, man. She's smart. Like she's first in this NFT space. Like she's killing it. She's a smart lady.
All right, so I was going to bring up NFTs eventually, but what's the deal with these things? Half the people I talk to, you try to explain it to them, and it's like their eyes gloss over, and they have no idea what the hell I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? But I think it's just early. I think like the art world got in it and they get it, and like
Mm.
anyone that's in the metaverse already in collectibles, like they're killing it and they're collecting things, and you're seeing like things like Bored Apes just jumped. I think of Bored Ape, which is basically just you know an original one of one ape that you can buy. It's a digital asset. I think one sold for 2 million a few days ago. But music will catch up. I think what it'd be used for eventually is like everything in terms of like I know I'm Italian, got a lot of friends like in olive oil, right? Sounds pretty godfatherish, but it's true. Like that stuff is all fake. I'm sure whiskey as well and bourbon and scotch. Like, are we drinking the real stuff, or is there some shady stuff going on in that industry too? If you can add NFTs to that, to sneakers, like anything to prove its authenticity and ownership and authorship, when you talk about music and art, that's the trick and the benefit of a blockchain, right?
Yeah, and when it comes to whiskey, there definitely is a lot of counterfeit out there, and it's real nasty. But it's bourbon. It's kind of new to bourbon. It's been happening in Scotch for a long time, definitely in cognac for a long time. But
Right.
but bourbon has never had this kind of like fame. In the modern world, fame is so different too. It's like an influencer can bring you millions of fans immediately. And what we're seeing now with bourbon is that there's so many people getting into the space that they're just spending stupid money on a bottle that 15 years ago I would pay $20 for. Now they're paying
Right.
500 for it. So
Well, if I buy that $500 ball, I want to make sure that that's the real deal, and I think that's where NFTs and blockchain can definitely help. I mean, you see it in olive oil, the like that. I'm from Toronto originally. The
mhm.
worst is actually maple syrup. Supposedly, like the stuff we're really buying is it's not even close to like pure maple syrup these days.
Yeah, I believe that. So actually, so the bottle I sent you a bottle of Michter's 10-year-old. This would be a really good bottle to kind of go through of like this is a high-end bottle, and this is how they, kind of come. They have like a wax. They have like a wax top here. They've got the, some numbers here to talk about what barrel it was, and then a few other things. You know, it would it would not be,
Oh my God.
how could you use an NFT to like help validate this? Like how could you do that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's really, you're just imprinted on the bottle and you put a hash on it somewhere,
Hmm.
and as long as it was like that I just pulled that thing off like the wax. That's so dope. Um, you know, at bottling, if you put that hash on it, all of a sudden that's it, and so wherever that gets sold, it has that authentication, it has that authorship that it's actually from Michters, and um, I open it. I'm gonna probably drink a lot of this today, but um, if I was gonna sell it, like 5 years from now, it's gonna have that hash along with it, and it's just validation, right? You
Okay.
can't mess.
So that could be something that, bourbon producers, if you're listening to this, that's Raine's throwing the gauntlet down here. Maybe add some NFTs to the bottles. That could be an interesting way to protect your products. Fascinating.
Yeah,
So
sure.
so we poured here. This is 10-year old. Michters is a brand that's coming on really strong right now. And I had a show in Oklahoma where I did a blind flight with a bunch of extremely rare stuff, and this bottle took second. Coming in first was Pappy Van Winkle, 20-year-old, 23-year-old, and this beat it's the Michter's 20. So it's a lot of people. This is on a short list for a lot of people for whiskey of the year right now. This 10-year-old.
All bourbon's not from Kentucky, right?
That's right. So bourbon can be made anywhere in the United States. In
Okay.
fact, in our tasting lineup here, we have a Wyoming whiskey, a bourbon there that we'll be tasting. But in 1964, Congress declared bourbon to be a unique product of the United States. And actually, prior to that, Canada would make bourbon, and the United States government ended up having we ended up having a mini trade war with Canada over them bottling bourbon and bottled in bond, because Canada is a blended whiskey country, incredible blended whiskey. Some of the best whiskey in the world comes from Canada, but they were trying to like mimic the U.S. styles, and there's a during this time there's a big back and forth between U.S. and Canada. They hated each other in the whiskey circles, and there was for a brief time in the 1930s there was a trade war over
Oh, really?
over bourbon. Yeah, and
Wow.
and they ended up with Congress passing of that legislation in 1964. You know, Canada would cease to stop using the word bourbon in there, but when in fact Crown Royal a couple of years ago released a bourbon mash, and they ended up getting some cease and desist real quickly. But that was just to kind of tap into the popularity of bourbon. It's very complicated, but the fact is that Canada does distill the exact same stuff that is distilled here in terms of a recipe, and but they can't put bourbon on the label. But
Oh,
when but like Canada, like the Canadian distillers are blenders, so they will distill what they call a bourbon mash bill, and they will distill like a rye whiskey mash bill and a couple other things, and they will combine those together to create their product. And so they distill first and then blend. They're
the,
incredible blenders.
so blending like it's legit. Like it's a skill.
It is the most underrated skill in whiskey, and
Really?
it
Okay.
varies. The appreciation for it varies by country. So in Scotland, there's a great appreciation for blending. In Canada, it's enormous. In the United States, for a long time, blending was considered a dirty word, to the point that the distillers would call the actual act of blending barrels marrying barrels, marriage. They would use every word but blending, because blending was tied to those old whiskeys in the 30s and late 1800s that knocked bourbon off the shelf because they were cheaper. So that's a little historic backstory for you there on
I love it.
the word blending.
Yeah, I always felt like anything that's blended, it's like it's never as good because it's cheaper.
Yeah, and
So,
that's now that's the uphill battle that Canadian distillers have, is that they branded themselves to be like that, and Whistle Pig is buying is a high value, highly sought after premium product, and they're purchasing their whiskey and largely from Alberta distillers, which is obviously in Alberta, Canada, and
yeah,
that's the best rye whiskey on the market for the most
yeah,
part. So, and what the Canadian distillers would do is they would take what they are bottling straight out of the barrel here in the United States. They would take that and blend it in with something else. So it's a style that has its place, but distillers in Canada are incredible.
okay, I feel better about myself.
All right. So did you have a chance to taste the?
No, doing it right
Michters yet?
now. Right now.
So when you taste, don't drink it all. Just put a little bit on your palate, kind of feel it around a little bit. See what part of the tongue it's hitting, and you'll taste the sweet notes on the tip, the savory in the middle, the bitterness like in the back and the middle, and then spiciness in the back.
I was gonna say I'm getting like some sweet notes on the front, some savory. I'm kidding. That's exactly what you said. No, it's really it's beautiful. It's pretty smooth, but it has a little bite to it. I'm definitely not sophisticated in terms of how I describe it, but wow. Even the smell of it. I mean, my God, it's beautiful.
It is really nice. This is becoming like a staple in like high end bars right now. Is this 10-year-old? This is actually being requested over like 15-year-old and older products. So
Yeah,
bourbon has to go into a new charred oak barrel. So every day it's in that wood. It's like extracting all the color and the wood sugars, and then they will sell those used barrels to places like Canada and Scotland and Ireland that age their whiskey and use bourbon barrels. And so this is, they have found the sweet spot with this year's 10-year-old release, because it's just got the right amount of balance, and most certainly there's still some nice like hatch chili, some pepper. It's
got that little bit of pepper like at the end. Is there? So what's the deal with the color with bourbon? Is that an indicator at all?
Yeah. So the color is basic. When bourbon goes into the barrel, it's as clear as the water from your tap, and then it's working in and out of that wood like every single day, and it is it can't have anything added to it. So this is all from the barrel, and so the darker it is, the older it is, and or higher the proof. So it is a great indication of time in the barrel. In fact, we can go to the next one. We can go to the Kentucky Senator.
Yeah, that's got some real darkness to it.
And so that's a 15-year-old. Do you have multiple glasses or just one?
Can you go give me another glass? But it's got to be one of the whiskey glasses. I got my kid on call here to do my dirty work.
That's nice. So my kids, my 7-year-old he'll carry my stuff. So it's good. He'll be like walking through the liquor store, bringing me something that that I need. And it's funny, like at 7, he knows more about the bourbon industry than 99% of the adults in the world. So
I love it.
But you can see like this has 5 years. This has 5 years on the Michters, and it's got a little bit more proof on it. But if you take a look, you can definitely see a big color difference.
Sal, let's go, bro.
I was trying to find it.
Thank you. Doesn't smell as strong as a Michters to me. Like, it doesn't have. Is that correct, or am I missing something?
Well, you've got a different glass, so it's going to be the
Is
glass.
that bigger glass?
You get so your escape. So we were previously sipping out of the Glencairn.
Yep.
And so this is a very concentrated nose, like it's like formulated to hit your nose exactly. Whereas that one, you've got a lot of headspace and there's a lot of stuff moving out. But that won't change much on the taste. I mean, it's still going to taste like it's going to taste.
Maybe smell that one now and see if that's as strong as it was before.
Wow, that's really nice. The difference. What would be the difference? This one might be actually smoother. No.
It's about so it's 17. I think it's 17 proof points higher actually.
Wow, and it's
So smooth is kind of a weird subjective term. Which what is smooth for me? Someone who's like been drinking whiskey like out of the womb is going to be different than what's smooth for someone who's just getting into it. But often it's like it's a matter of mouthfeel. You know, it's not even the burn of the alcohol or anything. It's just like how it feels in the mouth. It's like this one does have a very mouth coating, buttery kind of dripping down the jaw.
Okay.
I feel
buttery. Like for me, if like as a layman here, I didn't get as many sensations from this Kentucky as I did from the Michters. The Michters had like so much else going on. Mm-hmm. Like there's so many things happening at the same time. This is definitely like I like the way you said buttery. Like it's just it coated. It's really nice, but it maybe not as peppery for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's they're both quite something. Now, when you're writing music, do you ever sip on a little something to get you some influence?
Yeah, I do. I kind of been like over the last 10 years like a Scotch guy. So, obviously, similar here, but that's my thing. Like I'm definitely I love the idea because I think creativity takes time. Mm-hmm. So the idea that you could like with Scotch and bourbon and whiskey, I like the idea you just sip them. Right. I'm not sitting there down in drafts. I'm not really a beer guy, to be honest. So, I love, it for me, it works like hand in hand with music and especially after, a show. And my trick live is, and I know this is probably like, doesn't work for you, but I always have a little, even like, it's cheap, but like Jameson with a little like actual Coca-Cola. I'm not a soda mm-hmm. guy, but like the sugar in the Coke and a Jameson or whatever. It's great for my throat.
So will you sip a little bit before you start singing?
I just sip it through the show. Yeah, I literally just have like a couple shots of Jameson and not a lot of Coke, but just enough for the sugar in there, and that's what I sip during the show. And it's amazing. Like it look, I'm sure like a vocal professional will tell you any alcohol, it dries your vocal cords out, blah blah blah. But I just it honestly it gets better through the show as I sip it.
It's interesting. Like everybody's different on that. When I've asked them, some of the people who can hit the highest notes, they're like, yeah, I drink all throughout. But those who have like really like deep voices, like, oh yeah, I can't touch anything. So it's very, it's fascinating. It's almost like it's almost like there hasn't been enough studying around vocal cords and what actually impacts them. So I think it's almost like I study taste, like the history of taste and how people are influenced by their genetics and everything. I think it could be very similar to vocal cords and what could impact them. Because I have friends. I mean, they're always going hoarse and they don't drink. It's like it makes no sense. You're always going hoarse. Someone raises their voice just a little bit, and they're like hoarse for a week. So it's
Yeah, I'll tell you the biggest bullshit out there is that throat coat tea that like I see on everyone's rider, and I bought in for a minute, and tea's terrible for you. Coffee's terrible for you. It definitely dries your throat out, and that's why it was actually my wife. So my wife, who's like a really good singer and a professional, she started on like the actual Coca-Cola years ago, and so I just adapted that because I was like, I'm not a big Coke guy. I get it for the sugar, so let's spice it up a bit. So started throwing scotch and whiskey in there, and I don't know. That's the throat coat right there. To say that.
That's your jam.
It's amazing. I literally played first show back a few days ago, and that was my go-to right away, and I had a great show.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. It does feel good to be back out again. I don't know how long it'll last, or if it will be sustained, but it does feel good to go back to shows and see talent perform, if you will.
Yeah, and I think even like when you're talking about drinking as well, like it's such a social thing. Like I found myself, my wife and I definitely drank during COVID, probably every day, but like opening up like a bottle of Michters or whatever, like that, you don't want to do that by yourself.
Right.
Stuck in your basement, that's dark.
Well, the past year, so basically what I do is, my performance is sipping whiskey with people. And in this past year, like I had a lot of private tastings virtually, that I do with, through retailers and stuff. And it was amazing. And I just realized I kept seeing all these people drinking more, and people were having like Zoom happy hour calls, and it got a lot of people through the first year of the pandemic, and to me it was not like people drinking to get through it. It was the social element, like kind of like you mentioned, like we crave that, and this stuff is really, it's just a conduit to friends and to good times. Yep. So cheers to you, man. Cheers to you and Our Lady Peace, man. You all are so iconic, so important to the rock movement, and the 90s. That was the music that inspired me in so many ways, and it was my time of high school and college, and Our Lady Peace is one of the few bands from that time that are still going, and I know you're the only original member left, but what's it like to to look at the old Billboard charts and look around and see it's pretty much you all and just a couple others left?
Yeah, I've all what's funny, I've always, Fred, I appreciate that, man. Thank you for saying that. I've always looked at music kind of like a fine wine or a bottle of scotch or whiskey, in the sense of like, there's very few that age really well, and so all my thing from the beginning was like, I think about like, let me make a bunch of, like, don't ever judge us by a song or one album. It's about a body of work, right? And so, when we're looking at like something like a Michters or that Kentucky Senator, like 15 years, anything that's like 20 or 30 years old, like that's how I see myself. A lot of parallels there, and this new album, I don't even think it's a bold thing. I think it's the best album we've ever made for a bunch of different reasons. Like the ability to reinvent yourself, the ability to sustain a career, like all those things it's hard, man. It's hard, music's tough. And so, I'm very happy to be sitting here talking about bourbon and talking about music.
Yeah. And music has changed so much. Like, I hear from musicians all the time, like when they're talking, when the mic's off or the camera's off, of like, they'll give their opinion about someone. And like, I'm a layman. I don't know anything about music. I love listening to music, but I can't tell you a drummer sucks. I can't tell you a guitarist is off or anything like that. I can't tell you any of that stuff. Right. But it's amazing to me what, like, and I would consider you, like you could play in any generation. You're that kind of musical talent. But it's always amazing to me that we are music tends to be generational. Like the music today, no way it's a hit in the 90s or the
Right, right.
70s, and like Our Lady Peace, your music is rather timeless. And not to say it's the exact same, but I think of Hall and Oates in much the same way. Like their music is like hit after hit after hit after hit, and it's very different, but it's timeless as well. Fleetwood
Yeah,
Mac's the same way. There's not a lot of timeless music, in my opinion, being made right now. But so the status of music, from an artist perspective, I can imagine to be in your shoes after all these years, to still be right there in the thick of it. Gotta feel good. Gotta feel good.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Like, definitely planted a flag in the ground. I think the thing about music that maybe parallels alcohol too is like there's just so much of it these days. It's hard to know what's good. It's hard to know what to listen to. It's hard to find music. It's hard to
Mm.
discover, because you think it would be easy because we can just get on Spotify or Apple and listen to anything, but it's overwhelming. And I look at like the craft brewery industry. My God, there's so many out there now. Is that happening to bourbon and whiskey as well?
It is, but there's quite a bit more capital investment and time for a distillery.
Can't jump in. Some guy
Yeah.
on the weekend can't just jump in.
Yeah, with craft beer, well, it's definitely not easy. There's the step of fermentation, and there's obviously more to it than that. But they don't have to distill and like, a batch after batch after batch. They can improve 20-fold in a matter of a year, whereas the distillers may not know where their improvements need to be for a year or two. So
Right. That's a good point. Yeah.
unless they're making an unaged product like unaged rum or gin or vodka, things like that, then the distillers have to wait. you know but craft beer is a very, very different beast. And by the way, there's a lot of bad craft beer out there.
Yeah. Craft beer is like pop music to me, and I think that makes sense now. They're not really in it for the long game. You just try to put something out there and see if it works, um, and a lot of it's bad. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, just because you can add hops to something doesn't mean you should. But
Yeah.
so now I want to take you to. We're going to jump up in proof. I just want to warn you. This is going to be 118 proof. It's the Elijah Craig barrel proof. Now I have a philosophy, Raine, that you taste differently from day to day. And I imagine it's very similar to singing. You probably have your good days and your bad days. You can always do it, but you definitely have some days, man, I nailed it, and some days, ooh, I wasn't all there.
Yep.
It's the same with tasting. So I have already reviewed this one. I reviewed it pretty negatively for what it is. So this is a limited edition release series that I think is the best that you can get pretty easily. And this is still very good, but in comparison to its past releases, I thought it missed the mark. So I sent this to you to kind of have this conversation about tasting is as much of a physical activity as running or singing, and all of the things that you do leading up to the day that you taste or the moment you taste will influence how you taste in a moment. So this is going to be my first time tasting it since my review a couple of months ago. So we'll see if it still holds up to if it still feels on my palate and everything, like I said before.
That's real. So I have a question then. Is
Mm-hmm.
the bite and the peppery, is that all enhanced because of the proof?
Um, in this case, there's yes. Um, you you definitely feel that spice more because of the alcohol proof, but this one's got like
You're not digging it?
so I stand firm in my belief before that it's got like a woodiness, a bitterness in there that I don't like.
A bitterness, yeah. I feel that.
But that is to say too that you know, I'm also holding it to a standard that I have for this particular release.
So with these guys, when you're saying, I found what you're saying was interesting before, like, you don't know. Like, how, like, they distill this and put it in the barrels and hold on to them forever, and it comes out. If it's like that, like, say they had the same
Yeah.
kind of take as you, like, what do? They got to release it, right?
Yeah, I mean, the fact is you could put a pile of fermenting dishwater in a bottle and call it bourbon, and it would sell right now. So you they're not having any problem not selling something just because I say I don't like it. In
Right.
fact, when I say I don't like something, people typically buy it just to say I was wrong. But with this one, there was like all these like social media threads like agreeing and disagreeing with me, and it's like people get really passionate about this stuff. So it was kind of funny. But this is one that to me was completely off flavor profile for this particular product, and while good, um, I think it may have been better off in a different bottle, a different brand of theirs. So
Gotcha. Hey man, we all miss the mark once in a while, right?
that's right.
I have songs that I'll never play. Like, I will never play.
Oh, not like that you've released?
Yeah, that we put on records, and it's like, it's one of those things. You sometimes you force stuff, and I would imagine maybe, like, with these guys behind closed doors, maybe even agree with you and be like, yeah, we missed the mark on this. It's not our best stuff, but we got to put it out.
Oh yeah, that would definitely happen. Or they'd be like, you don't know what you're talking about, you're wrong, or something like that. But but not everything can be a 90-point score. You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Yeah.
so I do appreciate, especially the album analogy with the songs, because you gotta have a couple hits in there, and then you gotta have a bunch of filler, right?
Well, yeah, there's just always going to be some misses. And look, when I go back to, like, thinking about this new album that's coming out, Spiritual Machines 2, there is no filler, there's no misses. Like, I listened to this record for the first time. My kid's a basketball player, and we were in Alabama. So I flew into Atlanta, and I rented a car, and I drove to Birmingham. It's like a couple hours, and I put on the record for the first time to, like, listen to it all the way through, and I was, like, smiling the whole way. First time, there's not a note. There's not something about the record that I would go back and change, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome. Do you have any songs that you're like, oh, I gotta play this again? Oh.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, and a lot of bands that we had a hit called "Somewhere Out There."
Mm-hmm.
Might actually be our biggest hit. And it's not that I don't like it, but it's the stuff that was around it, the way it was released, the label, just the way it was perceived. It was like, yeah, it's not my favorite. It's bad probably if you don't play it, and I would never do that to fans. I think that's pretty selfish. They pay money to see us play, and that was one of the songs that they come to hear. So we usually play it most nights. We didn't play a show in Toronto on Saturday, and I pulled it right at the end of the set. But it happens. It's part of the journey.
Well, you have a lot of songs that you all have done, so I'm sure your fans they got a healthy feeding of Our Lady Peace, and they didn't leave unsatisfied. So
yeah, I didn't see one hate text or email or a post or something, so I'm good.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
All right, so now let's go to the Wyoming whiskey. Now, this is This is a bourbon that was made in the state of Wyoming, and the money go from this bottle, which this is a $250 bottle, I believe. I think that's right, as the SRP on it,
Oh,
is
wow.
is going to the National Parks Foundation.
Well, just like in general, like all the parks across America.
Yeah, so there's like a foundation that helps maintain it, because our federal government doesn't always do the best job of making sure it's taken care of. I mean, there's all kinds of stories of like rangers working for free, getting cut, like getting furloughed, and they're still working, to maintain the parks. But, the national parks, I think, is one of our country's greatest assets. And sometimes they get brought up in political discussions to have budgets cut, and this foundation kind of helps to keep it going.
I love that.
Now, one of the things that you learn in wine is about terroir, and for a long time, American whiskey has known two states, and that's Tennessee and Kentucky.
Right.
And if sometimes Indiana, Indiana's got a couple distilleries that was really well known for a long time, and now they're getting back into the limelight. But what we're seeing now is that there's a lot of new distilleries coming online, not at the same pace as like craft beer, which we talked about, but we're seeing a distillery in Wyoming, a few in Texas, New York, Oregon, state of Washington. All these places are having a big influence, and we're starting to see a little sign of terroir. And terroir in like France is like the weather, the geographical placement, whether it's by mountains or by a river, all of it having special microclimate impact on the grapes, and that goes into it. We're starting to see that with whiskey and American whiskey, which we've never had really before, with water, elevation, types of woods that they're able to procure for their barrels. And this is a really great example of a bourbon that you would never taste coming from Kentucky.
I actually really like this.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Yeah, it has a really nice finish. The thing about water, for real, like that is so real. There's I mean, this is an offside thing, but there's a pizza place here in LA called Demore's, and they bring the water in from Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Tastes like nothing in this city. It's my favorite pizza by far, and that's why, for sure.
That sounds awesome. So how do they ship it in by like a tanker or
Yep.
like?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I was living in Malibu when we first moved to LA from Toronto, and for whatever reason, this was one of the first pizza places we tried, and I was like, "Damn, this feels like East Coast pizza." And for 10 years, I never asked or said a word to them. And then finally, we were sitting, and the owner was in one of the. There's a bunch of them now, but the OG one in Malibu, and I was like, man, like, you're obviously from the East Coast. Like, they had all the pictures on the walls from them being in Boston. And but I said, how do you like what? How does this pizza taste like? They say, oh, it's the water. We ship it in. That's the main reason. So I for sure would think that would work with bourbon too.
Yeah, although like there are some states they put restrictions on water, like Nevada. There's a brand there called Smoke Wagon, and he's essentially not allowed to distill because of the amount of water it would take. And they're at a water deficit at all times. Yeah. And Texas is probably not far behind that. Whereas Kentucky, I mean, we have an aquifer that's enormous. You just tap right into that, man. Boom. Got good water right there, limestone filtered and everything. So it's you see what's happening in California with the wildfires all the time. It's just I think at some point in the next decade, we're probably going to have to, in the distilling community, there's going to have to be some very difficult questions answered about the use of water because of so many water shortages across the country. But
can you tell me, like, I don't know the process as well, obviously. Why does it take so much water to distill?
So, you ferment, you ferment the grains. Then you distill it, and for like a large a large amount of, I can't give you the exact the exact amount, but for something like this, if it, say that this is filled up to the brim, that would probably equate to a drop of spirit. So it takes a lot of water to distill, and you're basically you're the when the grains enter the water, they cook them, so they convert the starches to sugars, and then they add yeast, and the yeast feeds on the sugars, and at this point, the yeast basically eats sugar and pisses out alcohol. So at this point, it's alcohol. It's no longer water or anything like that. Then they will take that fermentation, and they will distill it at certain degrees, and it'll separate the alcohol from the solids, and it will basically drip out as a spirit. They will get a large amount of that spirit, and then put it in a barrel, and at that point it's evaporating. So there's a lot of water lost through the entire process, through evaporation, through cooking, through distillation. So that's just part of it.
Right. It's like almonds.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
yeah. Right. Not supposed to eat almonds because it just takes too much water.
yeah, and yeah, almonds are like, there's been a few documentaries about that, like how aggressive they are about getting water rights from other areas. Whew,
Yeah.
scary, man.
New world.
So you've always been like a socially conscious and active, person. Is there anything, you're really, passionate about right now that you're out there voicing your opinion for?
Politics, and I don't want to get too heavy in it, but I saw I saw Peter Gabriel when I was first coming up, talked about like Greenpeace and Amnesty, and kind of just got me into like, okay, artists they can wear two hats, right? They can
Mm-hmm.
they be artists, which I appreciate, and I am, but then depending on what you sing about, you can bring in other people and have some influence there. And so we joined this organization early on called War Child, my wife and I, based out of Canada. And there was a chapter in the UK, in the Netherlands, in Canada, and started traveling early on. And I really credit like War Child and the founders, who are like legit, like the godparents of our kids now, and they're doctors, and just incredible people. They're not, I don't use the word virtuous often, but they are truly virtuous. And then we just got to travel. So we're in Iraq, we're in Afghanistan, we've been to Sudan, and their whole thing is about just protecting war-affected children. So to see what's going on in Afghanistan right now is pretty heavy. Just knowing that War Child has 2 programs there that'll probably be shut down, if not already shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just it's like the world never stops, man. We just globally went through like whatever year and a half of hell with COVID, trying to come out of that, and seeing these fires start, literally and figuratively in these other countries now. It's just rough.
Yeah, and I was a soldier in Iraq, and I worked with a lot of kids there, and one of the things that we did is we set up a clinic for kids, and just people who have never been outside of the United States and to some of these countries. It's difficult to understand until you see it for yourself. Yeah. Pictures do not do a child's inability to breathe because his mouth is swelling from some type of bite, that won't be cured with normal medicine. It's just you can't fathom it. So I applaud you, man. And yeah, what's happening with Afghanistan, it's hitting us all in the hearts. So I applaud you for your support with War Child.
Really yeah, do. Thanks. Well, I mean, yeah, thank you for your service. It's funny when we know so many vets and soldiers, and like you said, you have to travel. Like I think traveling is so key. Just to, literally expanding your mind. Like it sounds cliche, but that's the only way to do it, because seeing shit on your phone is one thing, but like you said, getting there, looking a kid in the eye, or someone in the eye, or someone. When we first landed in Iraq, I was like, we were scared. We were the first people back after between the two wars, and it was like, but people invited us in for tea. I was like, what's happening? Like we're all humans, under the surface, and there's bad people everywhere, but there's a lot of good people too, right?
All right, so so I very rarely get to have this kind of a conversation with somebody. You were invited into an Iraqi's home to drink tea. How much sugar did they put in the tea?
Isn't that wild? It kind of ruined me. It's literally like, oh, you're right. It's half a cup of sugar and some tea, and it's delicious.
It's
because you're in, it's hot outside, and you're like, this is amazing, and it's like candy. Like that's all you do is you just drink tea. And I'm it's funny. I'm kind of psyched for getting into this. Going there, I was like, oh damn, I bought like a suitcase of Cliff Bars and just like ramen soup. I was like, because I don't know what they eat over there. But the food, like their bread and the roasted chicken was like the best ever, man.
Oh my
and the
gosh.
tea, I was like, I was set. I think I gained weight when I went to Iraq.
Yeah, that food, like we had incredible chefs cooking for us. It'd be lamb, chicken. It would be so much amazing food there, and the spices. Like I'd never heard or seen any of those spices since. And
I know. I tell the story always because we got in on a UN plane. Like we were lucky to get in on a UN plane, and then we couldn't get one out. So we drove in, a taxi from Baghdad to Amman, Jordan, which was like, I don't know, 18 hours, something. It was hell. And when we finally made it to Amman, like right on the streets, I bought a falafel for 25 cents. I've been like, and this was back in whatever 2000. I've been trying to find falafel that tastes like that ever since, and I can't do
it. The search for the great Iraqi falafel.
That's it, man. That's it.
We got a couple falafel houses here in Louisville that are pretty strong. The Saddam's former chef ended up being a refugee here, and he opened a place, and he trained a bunch of Iraqi chefs that that have since populated our market. And then in Nashville, there's a lot of Kurdish refugees, and you'll find a little falafel house here and there. But,
oh wow!
Yeah,
I'm down. I literally, honest to God, Fred, like no word of a lie. Every time I eat a falafel, I compare it to that one I got on the street.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that story. Well, we got one more whiskey, the 291. Now, this is where, out of respect for you and the day you have to come, I just want to make sure you're good to go here, because this will be whiskey number 5. You good?
Oh, I'm better than good.
Love it. So this is made in Colorado, and it's finished. So by finished, I mean they put additional. They have an additional process to it. They finish it in with aspen staves. So they get little pieces of aspen from the tree, and they put it in the barrel. So it'll be a completely different.
I didn't read the whole label. Like you're talking about the staves, but I see, like I smell something really sweet, and I see maple syrup barrels. That's pretty cool.
Oh, that's the one. That's M. That's M, the one finished in maple syrup?
Yep.
Right on.
Oh, wow. Very different, though. Something like really smoky in this one. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that, they're young, using smaller barrels, but it's not like bad, it's just the kind of it's
like dirty.
Gonna get dirty on me here, Raine. All right, I like it. But it's definitely the smoke in 291 is always prominent, earthy.
Yeah, earthy.
Kind of. It's very, very, very different. Like it's one where I always finish with this one because if we started with it, your palate may not recover because it's so
Right.
different.
Yeah. I feel that. Yeah, I like it.
Right on, man. Oh, so what was your favorite of the tastings so far? Well, we went through the entire thing. So, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I think it was the. And I don't want to be like it. Was it the? Sorry, I'm missing one of the bottles. Okay, hopefully my kid didn't run out with that little bottle. Right? Oh no, here it is. Yeah, I think it was the Kentucky Senator, and I don't want to be because it was 15 years old, but between that and the Michters, but it's tough to tell. Like I guess your palate probably numbs a bit as you go through these, right?
You either adapt or you get numbed. Yeah, that tends to be the way to go. Like you're either getting better or you're like about to, you won't be able to taste dinner. It depends on what level you are.
Yeah, I definitely I like the Senator. It had some of the same I don't know, complexities of the Michters, but a little bit smoother maybe.
Well, I think that's a good choice.
What do I know?
That's a good choice.
I'll keep drinking. I'll let you know if it changes.
That's so definitely taste it tomorrow and see, go through it again or maybe the next day and see if see where it kind of fits. So
love it, man. What a treat. This has been my favorite podcast ever.
All right, man.
Because we're drinking, but good conversation, and thank you for sending all this stuff.
Absolutely. Look, I love doing this, but more importantly, it's about it's about making new friends and bringing people into bourbon, educating people about the good stuff, and I just gotta say I can't wait to see you on stage again sometime soon, and really appreciate you making the time, brother.
Oh, I thank you, man, and definitely when we come into town, we'll hang. Our lighting technician, he's a rock star. When he heard I was coming on, on the Fred Minnick podcast, he was, oh, dude, listen to everyone. He's a bourbon, he's not obviously an expert like you, but he's in it, man. He's gonna love. Awesome. I'm legit gonna bring this stuff on the road. I'm gonna save some for him, and we'll do it live.
Right on. Well, if you run out, I'll send you some more. So, I've got a few bottles.
Yeah, looks like it. Thanks so much, Fred.
Absolutely. Cheers, man.
Yeah, cheers to you, dude.
Be safe.